Good evening and welcome to the US 101 Pismo Congestion Relief Pilot Project Draft Environmental Document Public Hearing. My name is Stephen Hanamaikai and I am a transportation planner at SlowCog. SlowCog's primary role is to work with state and local agencies to fund and deliver transportation projects, in this case, the project being on the state highway system. I'm joined this evening by our project development team from Caltrans, who is in the unique position of not only being the owner and operator of the state highway system and ultimately responsible for this project, but is also SlowCog's consultant of choice to complete the environmental documentation phase of the project. I'll give each member of the team an opportunity to introduce themselves and give a little bit more information about their role in this project as we get to their portions of the presentation. Today's public hearing will include a brief presentation followed by a question and comment period. All question and comments will be submitted that are submitted at any point throughout the meeting will be addressed when we reach the question and comment period. Also on the line is Anna Devers, our SlowCog's public information officer. She will help us to monitor the comments coming in and also help us to run the question and comment portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm Paul Valadeo, and I am the project manager for the Pismo Congestion Relief Pilot Project. And the project is located as depicted in the presentation, spanning from San Luis Creek Bridge to the north, traveling along the southbound lanes to the railroad overhead bridge just south of Pismo Creek. The project's purpose and need is to improve operations on southbound US 101 during peak travel periods. And US 101 southbound lanes are operating at or near capacity during those peak travel periods. The major project features is to widen the southbound inside shoulder to 14 feet for approximately 4 miles. In that 4-mile widening, there are widening of 4 bridges. Those bridges are at Spyglass Drive, Mattie Road, Wadsworth Avenue, and Pismo Creek. As part of the project, there is a park and ride lot at Mattie Road and Price Street. We'll go into detail of that location here in a bit. And finally, the major feature that I would like to highlight is the construction of a retaining wall between 101 and Price Street, where we're trying to avoid the Pismo rock and requires widening to the outside in that one instance. Some of the alternatives that were considered but rejected was a full-time general purpose lane. When you're dealing with a full-time general purpose lane and not a part-time travel lane, it requires much wider shoulders to the left and right of travel. And our corridor here through Shell Beach and Pismo Beach is just not wide enough to accommodate that. Also, a high occupancy vehicle lane, sometimes known as a carpool lane. We love our acronym, so HOV lane was not considered simply because that 4-mile length is often not enough of an investment in length to buddy up with a coworker and get into a carpool team, if you will. Also, the median to house a reversing lane was not considered because of that coastal terrain. We're nestled up against the coastal ranges alongside the coastline, simply was not conducive for a reversing lane. And also continuously entering and exit of this left shoulder part-time traveling that's being proposed was not considered because it took away too much efficiency. So we have a 1 enter, 1 exit to this part-time traveling for as much efficiency as possible for this 4-mile component of the part-time travel lane. We have 2 alternatives that are being proposed. The first alternative, number 1, is widening to the inside for the part-time travel lane, and it begins just north of Spyglass Drive. It includes a median retaining wall at the start of the widening, and there is a variation to this alternative, which is to extend the truck climbing lane that currently exists past Spyglass Drive exit. And then alternative number 2, the part-time travel lane begins just past San Luis Obispo Creek Bridge in the current number 1 lane or leftmost lane. The truck climbing lane becomes a general travel lane, and the widening to the inside for the part-time travel lane begins north of Spyglass Drive. When it comes to the truck climbing lane, in the context of the 2 alternatives just discussed, alternative 1 without the variation is maintain truck climbing lane in its current configuration. Alternative 1 with the truck climbing lane variation is to extend the truck climbing lane to merge after the Spyglass Drive exit. And alternative number 2 is to convert the truck climbing lane to a continuous general travel lane, really taking that pavement real estate, if you will, and using it all to configure the new left shoulder part-time travel lane and the 2 through lanes. As indicated earlier, and now really kind of honing in on the location, what you see encircled is the proposed park and ride lot. The dirt park and ride lot that's informally used will be expanded with more pavement and some more formal spaces to park in. Now I hand over my component of the presentation over to our environmental coordinator in Paula Huddleston. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paula Huddleston, and I am the environmental coordinator on this project. The environmental studies for this project were done by a team of specialists, and that information has been compiled into the draft environmental document that's currently out for review. Our studies have shown that this project, as proposed, would have significant impacts on the environment and on the population in general. So the environmental document identifies that there would be significant impacts to the cultural resources in the area, as well as from increased noise, from a decrease in the visual quality and character of the freeway corridor and Pismo Beach. And also there would be a decrease in the air quality, which would be a significant contribution to the cumulative greenhouse gas emissions. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Pismo Beach is rich in cultural resources due to the long history of habitation by the Northern Chumash tribe of Native Americans. Our cultural resource specialist has been working closely with the tribe members. He's met with them out on the project site. They've been provided with preliminary plans to make sure they understand the project, and he will continue to work with them, keeping them informed, getting their feedback on how we can best protect the resources that are out there. So as part of our studies, we tested the project limits to see if we are likely to impact any existing sites. Most of the project construction would not go any deeper than about 4 feet. That is well within the area that's been previously disturbed by construction of the original highway and other modern development. Where the project needs to excavate more deeply, such as with the bridge or wall foundations, there's a greater likelihood of hitting intact material. We'll have monitors out there during construction, both Chumash and Caltrans, watching all the excavation activity. If anything is discovered during excavation, that activity will stop immediately until whatever they've found can be evaluated. So even though we don't expect to hit any intact resources because of all the disturbance that's been caused to the historic Chumash territory over the decades, any further disturbance has been determined to be a significant contribution to cumulative impacts to these resources. If construction does unearth anything that's determined to be relevant to the Chumash, we would conduct proper data recovery and then analysis of that material. But we would also include other mitigation, things like public outreach, educational displays, and anything we do would be in coordination with tribal members. We have a team of members who have been specially trained in creating unique and meaningful installations that are both educational and attractive. And they have a lot of different techniques and materials that are available to them. I've brought some slides of examples of things we've done in the past. This is at the roadside rest area on 154. These are inlays in granite representing significant periods in Santa Barbara history. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, sorry. These are educational panels at a pullout, sorry, one back, on a pullout on 101 in Santa Barbara. You'll also notice there's a design on the ground of an otter in kelp. Okay, then the next slide. This is another inlay design at a pullout in Big Sur of Wales. And the next slide. This is also in Big Sur. These are information panels that are set into boulders. And there's also an audio component on the left there, you can see. The next slide, this is slope paving on 101 in Goleta. This is an idea that could be incorporated into our project because we will also be having slope paving. And the next slide's another example of slope paving. This is in Santa Cruz and it represents the history and it's an archaeological dig. And then this is a booklet that we produced as mitigation for the suicide barrier that was put up on the Cold Spring Bridge on 154. It contains photos and information on the historical significance of the bridge. A lot of these were picked up by visitors to the Cold Spring Tavern. They thought it was really interesting. So those are just some ideas of how we might create installations highlighting the Native American presence in Pismo. We'd work with the Chumash to come up with ideas that were specific to our region. Okay, moving on to noise. I know this is what a lot of you want to hear about. It's important to note that the freeway noise level is expected to increase as a result of the project because people are going to be driving faster. Whenever we have a project that could increase noise levels above 67 decibels or by more than 12 decibels, we are required to consider noise abatement. In this case, that would be noise barriers or sound walls. It's important to know that we are not talking about the concrete safety barrier on the outside shoulder of the freeway. The sound walls would be from 8 to 12 feet tall. I also want to stress that the sound walls we're going to be talking about today are not a definite part of the project. They're being evaluated as required, and no decision has been made yet about including them or not. The studies were done to show what would be necessary to reduce the noise levels from the project. Originally, we looked at 13 wall locations, but most of them dropped out because they didn't meet their criteria for cost and effectiveness. What we're left with is 3 wall locations, one on the northbound side and one on the southbound side. You'll see they're numbered non-sequentially. That's because of the ones that dropped out. In the top figure, that wall is located on the northbound side of the freeway along the Wadsworth exit ramp. In the bottom figure, wall number 2 is located along the Spyglass Drive on-ramp, and the next one, number 3, is located a little farther along between the highway and Shell Beach Road. Each of these walls has been estimated to cost just under $3 million. A decision about these sound walls won't be made until much later in the process after we've heard from you and are starting final design of the project. So as you can imagine, sound walls would have a major impact on the appearance of the freeway corridor and of the town itself. And most importantly, the southbound walls would block ocean views. Even without the sound walls, though, the project would have a significant adverse impact on visual quality. The additional lanes, wider pavement, retaining walls, loss of vegetation, the lane use control signals, all of these components will create a much more urban appearance to the freeway corridor and would be somewhat out of scale with the rest of the small beach town community. We've prepared some photo simulations of how the project could look. Now, keep in mind that these are just conceptual images and they're not necessarily how it will actually appear. This is viewpoint number 1. It's taken looking in the southbound direction towards Pismo Rock. You can see an inset map there that shows the location of this viewpoint. Currently, there's a vegetated median that slopes down to Price Street. At this location, the freeway lanes would have to be shifted over to the outside in order to swing around Pismo Rock. So that median would be filled in and a retaining wall constructed along Price Street, and then the safety barrier placed on top of the wall. The part-time travel lane is shown on the left, and you can also see the new concrete median barrier, which is going to be taller than we've had before. The next slide, viewpoint number 2. This is looking southbound in the vicinity of the sound wall number 2, which you can see on the right. If this wall were built, it would actually sit on top of the safety barrier, not behind it, and the appearance would be a little more seamless than shown in this photo. You can also see the new barrier, median barrier on the left. Any of the walls, the median barrier, any concrete surfaces, these would all receive some sort of aesthetic treatment like color or texture or both. The next slide, viewpoint number 3. This is from the northbound lanes looking towards the coast, and you can see the new median barrier. Depending on the height of your vehicle and its position in the lanes, this barrier could obscure the ocean view. Next slide, viewpoint 4. This is from Price Street looking towards the highway in the vicinity of Sound Wall 3. We haven't made any decision on what sort of aesthetic treatment any walls or any other surface would get at this point. We would revegetate as much as possible as well. The vegetation that's shown in this simulation would be after several years of growth. The next slide, viewpoint 5. This is from Matty Road looking down on the highway towards wall number 3 in the background. And you can also see the southbound lanes as well as the median barrier. The next slide, viewpoint number 6. This is at the northern end of the project looking southbound. This shows the new part-time travel lane that would be replacing the median, and you can also see one of the lane use control signals. Again, these images just give a rough idea of how the project would sit within the existing corridor. So moving on to air quality. So we all know that traffic congestion creates pollution and poor air quality, and you think that by improving the congestion, we would improve the air quality as well. However, once vehicles are going faster than about 55 miles per hour, they actually become less efficient and start producing higher carbon dioxide levels. Consequently, the carbon dioxide levels would actually be higher than if the project weren't built. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, which contributes to climate change. The good news is that the carbon dioxide levels and other emissions are expected to decrease over time, regardless of whether we build a project or which alternative, because of stricter regulations and cleaner vehicles. You can see here, if you a number cruncher, you can see that the no build has lower emissions than any of the build alternatives. Moving on to biology, the project really isn't expected to have much of an impact on biological resources. Mostly it would involve the work that's being planned with widening the Pismo Creek Bridge. In the next slide, you can see the bridge here looking in the southbound direction. We'll be putting in a new column on the left, and the slope paving would all be replaced with grouted rock slope protection like you can see on the right there of this photo. Next photo there, again, you can see the 2 new columns that are shown in red. We're also going to be installing sheet piling at the base of the slope. The sheet piling will result in a crenellated edge like what you can see on the left side of the creek there. Let's see, the sheet piling is going to require a little bit of dewatering. We're going to use gravel bags, just dewater the small area needed, take the gravel bags back out, and that's pretty much it for the creek. So the project's going to require several permits from other agencies. Most of these are for the work that's being done in the creek, but an important one I want to call attention to is the Coastal Zone Development Permit. This permit is important because it's going to provide another opportunity for a hearing and public input. The project's actually within the jurisdiction of 3 separate permitting agencies. You can see here the coastal zone boundary. This is the dark line, dark blue line inland. Our project limits are represented by the brown line. There's a small piece of the project at the northern end that's outside the coastal zone, but otherwise the rest of the project lies within it. The green portion to the north, that is inside the coastal zone, but outside of the city limits, and that area is within the jurisdiction of San Luis Obispo County. The area to the south in dark blue, that's in the vicinity of Pismo Creek and is within the jurisdiction of the California Coastal Commission. The rest of the project is within the jurisdiction of the city of Pismo Beach. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it off to Sam Toe to talk about traffic.
Thank you, Paula. That was a great presentation on our environmental stewardship by the project. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Toe, and I'm the traffic operation engineer for this project. I'm a Cal Poly alumni that has worked for Caltrans District 5 traffic operations for more than 20 years, and I love living in this beautiful Central Coast, and I'm in this area for over 30 years. So as everyone knows, this is a congestion relief project. So right-sizing the project is very important through a very detailed traffic operations analysis before any solutions can be proposed. Therefore, we need to first understand the issues that the corridor is having. So how do we go about identifying the deficiency of this corridor? We do it by field observation and field data collection. So for the next 10 slides, I'll be using Google navigation map that most people are familiar with to illustrate the existing condition. Now to orientate everyone on the map, the Pismo Rock is right there, and the Dinosaur Cave, the Spyglass Interchange, and then the Avila Beach Drive Interchange. So everybody can get yourself orientated on the map. In a way, as we go through the slides, you'll get yourself know what we're talking about. So shown here is a typical Thursday traffic, a white Thursday, because based on the few data that we've collected, Thursday tends to represent the typical weekdays commuter traffic. And this is before 3:30 p.m. And we can see that the traffic is free-flowing as shown. So the next slide, when we come to around 3:40 p.m., we start to see some traffic slowdown. And they're indicated by the 2 orange lines on the map. So 3 things that I would like to point out to the audience for the next 9 slides. That is, where are the downstream bottlenecks? Then they'll be indicated by the red circle. Secondly, what are the extents of this traffic slowdown? And they will be indicated by the orange line as shown on this map. And then thirdly, what are the extent of the stop and go condition, which will be indicated by a red line. So next slide, by the time we get to 4 p.m., we see there is a distinct bottleneck showing up and can be observed near Dinosaur Cave, as shown in this red circle. And the traffic slowed down to about 35 to 50 miles an hour. And we see that the slowdown has expanded from the bottleneck to just south of Avila Beach Drive Interchange. The next slide, just 5 minutes after 4, the distinct bottleneck continues, but then the traffic starts to slow down significantly, and the congestion is further exacerbated by the truck climbing lane merge. So stop and go traffic is observed and is indicated by the red line on the map. In this segment, the speed is at a crawling speed about 15 to 35 miles an hour or even lower. Sometimes you may come to a stop. This breakdown lasted for about an hour, but congestion and slowdown would continue to about 6 p.m. The next slide is when we reach around 5:05 p.m. We start to see traffic start to ease up a little bit. And in the next 2 slides, you also see that the bottleneck would fluctuate between Spyglass and Shell Beach area, as indicated by the red circle, sorry. And the slowdown segment will fluctuate as well between Avila Beach Drive and Shell Beach area. So we go to the next slide at 525. You can see the bottleneck and where the slowdowns segments is in 545. And you start to see the traffic is starting to ease up a little bit around 545. So if we toggle back and forth between 505 and 545, you can see how the bottleneck and the slowdown of the traffic fluctuates between this time period. Okay, and then the next slide will be at 5:55 p.m. You see that the traffic is free flowing again. So this is for a typical Thursday traffic. And someone may ask, how about Friday? How about Friday typical traffic? How does it look like? So if we go to the next slide, at Friday typical traffic would start to slow down around 3:25 p.m. That distinct bottleneck that we talked about gets closer to the Pismo Rock area. And the traffic congestion would extend from Pismo, San Luis Obispo Creek all the way down to near where Pismo Rock is. Also, we see the stop-and-go traffic was observed between Avila Beach Drive and the truck climbing lane merge, as indicated by the red line. So this breakdown would last about an hour as well, and the congestion will continue to around 6:10 p.m. on a typical Friday. Now, how about Saturday? Saturday typical traffic, how does it look like? We see the slowdown starts around 2 p.m. and the distinct bottleneck would occur between Dinosaur Cave and Pismo Beach as well. This is the extent of the congestion as shown by the red, orange line and the orange arrows. And the stop and go conditions would start around 2:30 or so between Avila Beach Drive and the truck climbing lane merge area, which is very similar to what we've seen in the previous typical day's traffic. The traffic breakdown lasted about 2 hours and 15 minutes on Saturday, and congestion will continue to about 5:40 p.m. on a typical Saturday. So with this understanding of the existing condition, during our traffic studies, we ran through 122 scenarios on combinations of improvements that we can think of, were analyzed, and the top of the three scenarios that surfaced that give us the best traffic performance, benefit cost ratio, and that are the right size for this corridor. And we selected that, which is the alternative one variation, and alternative 2. Traffic analysis were performed for the year 2026 and 2046, and the conclusion from that study is that the part-time lane will continue to perform well beyond 2046 during the peak periods of 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. So the next slide, we're going to show everyone the traffic control devices that will be implemented in the project. First thing is the lane control signal, as shown in that green down arrow. It will be mounted on a Caltrans standard signal and lighting standards. And second will be the sign package that's been approved by the California Traffic Control Devices Committee, CTCDC, the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, and as well as Caltrans headquarters. So looking at this sign package, these signs will all be placed on the left side of the freeway, and the direction of travel is indicated from left to right, top to bottom. So as a driver, as you drive down the freeway southbound, the first thing you will see is the first sign says left shoulder driving permitted 1 mile ahead. And then a quarter mile down the road, you'll see shoulder driving permitted on green arrow. And then further down another quarter mile, you'll see left shoulder driving permitted half mile ahead. And then it's repeated by the shoulder driving permitted on green arrow at a quarter mile and also at the beginning of the part-time lane. And then the same sign that says shoulder driving permitted on green arrow will be mounted on every signal pole. And as you drive through the part-time lane, as you get close to the end of part-time lane, you'll see shoulder driving ends at half mile, at quarter mile, and then shoulder driving ends. And then after that, you will see two standard signs that will be posted that says do not drive on shoulder and emergency stopping only. Okay, and then the next slide will be a vSim traffic simulation for the project that we created. So the purpose of this simulation video is to illustrate from a fly-through view how it would look like driving through the project. Before I run the simulation videos, a few things I want to point out on the video. This video is simulating the opening year 2026 and is for alternative 1, which is the part-time lane with truck lane remains as is. And the lower left corner, you will see there's a timestamp there. We're trying to simulate the traffic at 4:30 p.m. And there will be blue text in the video that provides kind of a waypoint for everyone to orientate yourself where we drive while we drive down the corridor. And also, this is a split screen video, as you can.
Sorry, Sam, technical difficulties. Here we go.
Okay, great. All right, and you can see this is a split screen video. So the top screen simulates the traffic when there is no part-time lane, and the lower screen simulates there is a part-time lane. In that way, we can compare the difference. And also, this video is speed up 2 times faster because of the time constraint that we have for the presentation. So we can play this video and let the audience kind of watch it. It is a 2 minutes long video. Can we maybe switch?
Hey, Stephen, could you share the video file and not the PowerPoint, please? Thank you so much. So restart the video and share the video, please. Thank you so much.
There you go. So this simulation starts near San Luis Obispo Creek. And as we drive southbound, coming up to Avila Beach Drive off-ramp with the signs on the left. We pass Avila Beach Drive interchange, coming out Avila Beach Drive on-ramp area. We have the half-mile ahead sign. You can see the top is when there's no part-time lane, which is what we're seeing today. There's congestion on the freeway. And truck lanes at end as is. And we're coming up to Spyglass off-ramp area. Driving over Spyglass interchange. Spyglass on-ramp. So as you can see at the top video, the traffic is much denser than the lower video when the part-time lane is open. Coming up to Price Street off-ramp, which is Maddie interchange, and then the Pismo Beach off-ramp. It's the first sign for half-mile ending of the part-time lane. Quarter mile. And that's a Price Street on-ramp. And the part-time lanes ends. And with that, I'll hand the time over to Stephen Hanamaikai from Lookout for Project Finance.
Thank you, Sam. Can you confirm that we're looking back at the presentation mode before I continue?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So like I mentioned, I'm Stephen Hanamaikai, transportation planner with SlowCog. You know, like I said, we're the sponsor for this project, and we work closely with state agencies, and in this case, Caltrans, to fund and build transportation projects. What we are showing here is the current spread of construction costs, which includes about $8 million for the construction of 3 sound walls that were noted by Paula. And these costs that we're showing here are escalated to 2023, which is the anticipated year of construction. You'll notice the slight variation of costs with a high of 63.8 and a low of $63.3 million. This is reflective of the slight variations in the designs of the three alternatives as described by Paul. SLCOG has invested $21.8 million toward a no sound wall construction scenario, which has a total escalated construction cost of $58 million. Of that $21.8 million investment, half is budgeted towards the developmental phases of the project. So the current phase, the environmental document, the design work, and the right-of-way. And the other half, $10.9 million, is allocated towards construction. The remaining $47.1 million for construction, SLCOG is pursuing a state grant, and that application is currently under consideration by the California Transportation Commission. And we should know mid-November of whether we were successful in that grant. This concludes the presentation portion of the project, and at this point we'll open it up to questions and comments. There's three ways that you can submit a comment. The first would be to click on the Q&A icon found at the bottom of your window and to type your comment in the chat box that appears. The second is if you would like to do a verbal comment, click on the participants icon at the bottom of the window, locate your name, raise your hand, and when it's your turn to speak, staff will announce you and unmute your line. If you're participating by phone and you would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. And when it's your turn, staff will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute your line. If you are participating by phone, note that you may have to, once you've been unmuted, need to press *6 to unmute your phone. We have Anna Devers on the line. How are we looking, Anna, for questions?
So far, nothing here. So just wait a second. Oh, we have one raised hand. Well, it looks like we have a raised hand from Craig. I'm going to allow him to talk now. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay, I guess I got the right unmute button. Is that correct?
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, hi, I'm Craig Cummings. I live in Shell Beach on Windward Avenue. And, you know, as best I could, I took a look and reviewed the 161 pages, tried to digest that. And then I also have printed out the aerial view of the, whatever it is, 13 sheets of the proposed plan. So I've got, you know, as far as the question goes, I was a little bit confused about alternative 1 and alternate 2. When it comes to in regard to the passing lane or the truck climbing lane coming up the Spyglass, you know, currently that is a big problem, creates a lot of bottleneck. And so I'm totally in favor of seeing that thing, you know, extended past the off-ramp, at least the off-ramp of Spyglass. I know people try to use that as a true auxiliary lane in that case, and it ends up still becoming a bottleneck. But for those of us who live in Shell Beach, rather than having to merge over, have all those people merge into the slow lane currently, and then slowly progress for another quarter mile, whatever it is, up to the off ramp is a large inconvenience, you know, and I say that strictly for the residents here. So I don't know how the alternates work here. If the truck climbing lane is extended at least to past the off ramp, does that change where the shoulder, you know, temporary use lane begins, or does that temporary use lane begin at the same point, you know, further down the hill towards Avila? So that's my question. I've got a couple of questions or comments. If I could go ahead with my comments before the question is answered.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll have Caltrans speak to your question about the operation of the three alternatives. Okay.
The retaining wall along Price Street, you know, between Matty Road and wherever it goes, it's 1,200 feet long or whatever it is. You know, that retaining wall, I understand the purpose. It's in order to widen the lanes and shift them to the right towards the beach, the ocean side, and get them around the Pismo Rock. Totally in agreement with that. Obviously, for the residents to live here and also the tourists and everybody else, because, you know, Price Street is a major artery in our neighborhood. And I would be, I think Caltrans would be remiss, I should say this, if they don't have somewhere in their plan in order to give some aesthetic treatment to that retaining wall, something that would, possibly reflect the beach community of Pismo and Shell Beach, and make this something attractive for us that use that road constantly, and also our visitors to our area, in order to enhance that road rather than just put up a solid concrete monolithic pour. So hopefully something is in consideration that way. My next comments kind of wrap around the sound walls. Yeah, I'm glad you explained that some of them were already pulled out, because I was confused where the rest of them went, because I could not track the numbers well. But, the sound walls, the ones that are over by, or the single one, I guess what it is the North Brown off ramp. For that community, that portion of Pismo, maybe that one makes good sense. And I don't see that that's a real visual impact as far as what would happen to the community with that one being built. But as far as along the southbound route of the 101, I am totally against any concrete barriered sound walls going up, because of the negative visual impact it would have on our, not just our community, for the people that live here, but, this is, you got to think, we're traveling south on the 101 from, I don't know how far north, a long ways north. This is the first view of the ocean you get along the California coast, as you rise the grade along the Ontario grade there and look out over the ocean. And if it turns into a sound wall cut up, cookie cutter look that you see in the middle of urban areas, I just don't think it enhances or adds to our community one bit. And I think it would be objectionable to see that. If the sound walls for some reason have to be employed, hopefully there could be some, not visual treatment to the sound wall. I would say a transparent sound wall would be the way to go. I just don't, your graphic representations of what the sound walls would look like, as I was looking at them that you were presenting tonight, they pretty much show what they look like from the highway side. I'm, again, a resident of the community, and I have to think of what they're going to look like from our neighborhood side. We not only look toward the ocean in our neighborhood, we also look toward the beautiful hills that are across the other side of the highway. So those concern me quite a bit. And so I would, my preference would be no sound walls, particularly if I understood the document correctly, that this increased noise is going to be due to the fact that we have pretty much the same volume of traffic. However, it's going to be flowing at a faster rate during these hours of temporary use of that temporary lane. And so I'm kind of questioning, is the visual impact of a sound wall worth it for a specific period of time during the day when the noise is going to be worse than it was the other 16 hours of the day? In my opinion, I don't think that they're worth it. If they happen to have to go in, I noticed that there are going to be retaining walls required in order to be able to support the vertical load, I'm sure, of those sound walls. Again, aesthetic treatment of anything that we have that's facing our community, in my mind, would be a requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. We appreciate those comments on the sound walls and the visual impacts. I want to offer Caltrans an opportunity to speak to the operational differences between alternative 1, alt 1 variation 1, and alternative 2. I will lower your hand and put you back on mute, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that question about where does the truck climbing lane begin, with regards to alternative 2, I think I'll defer to our design manager and David Beard. And thank you, Craig, for your comments, and this question we'll attempt to answer here. David?
Hi, yes, my name is David Beard. I'm glad to join the group. And I think I can add a little explanation to these diagrams. The picture on the left and the picture in the middle show the part-time travel lane on the left with gray color. And I can tell you the starting point is the same for both of those, even though graphically the proportions aren't the same. If you've been looking at the aerial drawings, you know it does start at the same place in both the left and center. That's where the big difference lies in alternative 2 on the right. It starts much, much sooner, farther north, just past San Luis Obispo Creek. So the ramps you see there are actually the Avila interchange ramps. And how alternative 2 differs greatly from those other ones is that the truck climbing lane doesn't really start as its own separate lane. Instead, the freeway lanes just ease over to the right, and the truck climbing lane that you already have becomes that rightmost travel lane. So in the area where we already have the 3 lanes built, the left one becomes the part-time travel lane, and the truck climbing lane then continues through without having to merge or end. It just keeps going to the south off the edge of the drawing. I hope that was specific enough to answer your question.
David, as far as the amount of traffic relieved between the 3 alternatives, it's true that there's not much difference in the benefits between the 3 alternatives. Is that true?
Yes, you're right, and Sam may add some detail to that, but really adding the part-time travel lane on the left is the key to solving the congestion problem. And it doesn't matter what else we do, really, as long as we do that, that's the bulk of the improvement right there.
Yes, I can add to that. That is correct, because of once we have the part-time lane open, we actually has increased the capacity through that segment. So basically, with the 3rd lane added during the peak period, we're able to address the congestion and the slowdown. So even with alternative 2, without the truck lanes, at the peak period time, we actually is opening up an extra lane. So ended up, you have 3 lanes going south all the way from San Luis Obispo Creek all the way down to just before the railway bridge.
Okay, thank you, Sam and David. Next on the line,
Okay.
Anna.
With that, Stephen, does that answer Craig's questions for now?
I think so, yep.
Okay, we'll move on. It looks like we have George Gibson. George, would you like to state your question or comment now?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I talked to Paul in detail. He gave me a lot of good information on the project. Had a chance to read some of the documents and everything, but one thing I think is missing, and I didn't hear it in the traffic count presentation by Mr. Tom. Was there an alternative looked at just simply removing the truck climbing lane? And I bring this up because the traffic coming southbound out of San Luis Obispo, before it gets to the San Luis Bay interchange, is moving quickly at speed without any problems, no congestion. There isn't a large change in the total amount of traffic on the freeway between the San Luis Bay Bridge and Spyglass. But yet there's a bottleneck, and the congestion starts because of I didn't hear anybody identify the idiots that sneak over into that truck lane and barrel down the freeway and then merge back in, causing people to slam on their brakes and cause a hammerhead reaction and backup that takes an hour and a half to clear. Was there a study or an alternative just to remove the truck climbing lane and remove the merge just before you get to Spyglass. Because if the traffic is moving smoothly southbound north of the San Luis Bay Bridge, if you remove that truck lane, there is nothing to stop that smooth movement of traffic continuing south into Arroyo Grande.
Thank you, George. I'm going to direct your question to Sam and David again. Sam?
Yeah, so we did look at that scenarios. The issues that we have right now is because during peak period time, the traffic demand is already exceeding capacity. So if we remove the truck climbing lane, we're still going to see slow down and stop and go traffic because the 2 lanes capacity has already been exceeded during the peak travel period. So if we go back to the 3 pictures that we have shown just now, basically what we have done in alternative 2 is removing the truck climbing lane. But by removing that, as I said, it reduces the freeway to be able to handle the demands during the peak time. So that's why we still need the part-time lanes to be open on alternative 2. In that way, we have enough capacity to handle the traffic demand. Does that make sense?
Not really, because what my concern is, the traffic capacity is being handled north of San Luis Bay intersection. And all of a sudden you introduce a 3rd lane that people use inappropriately, causing hard braking at the merge point before Spyglass. And if it can handle the capacity just 2 miles further to the north, why shouldn't it be able to handle the capacity at Spyglass using just 2 lanes and getting rid of the truck lane?
Go ahead. Sorry.
All I'm saying is you're giving too much credit to the people driving down that road. There are idiots that make lane changes to get ahead of 2 or 3 cars to get home 5 minutes earlier and make aggressive moves back into merge that causes the cars behind them to hit their brakes, hammerhead through the chain of events, and all of a sudden you get congestion. I truly believe that the capacity flowing down the freeway north of San Luis Bay Drive is being affected by motor vehicle driving habits that's offered by that truck lane. You remove the truck lane, you keep them in 2 lanes, they're going to move through there smoothly because they're not going to be jockeying for position between merging here and going there, being in the slow lane, jumping over to the fast lane.
Sam, did you want to respond to this? George, I appreciate your comments.
I can respond to that. So if we go back to my original very second slide of the presentation, we see that the actual bottleneck that causing the slowdown that backs up all the way to Spyglass area and also the Avila Beach interchange is actually further down south. But we do recognize that the truck climbing lane does exacerbate the problem. Okay, so if we look at the second slide or the third slide, so that circle, that is actually where the actual bottlenecks of the freeway is, that is causing a slowdown to back up all the way up north. So for alternative one variation, what we have done in our project is that we start the truck climbing or the part-time lane about a 1/3 mile north of Spyglass exit, which is also slightly north of where the truck merge lane is. So we actually ended up with 4 lane capacity right in that section. So we're able, because by doing that, we're able to handle the traffic capacity that is needed to send the traffic downstream. And for alternative number 2, we see that we remove the truck climbing lane, which will address your concern about idiots driving through, merging to the left. But we still need the capacity, the third lane capacity. So we open up the part-time lanes so that we have 3-lane capacity all the way down south through the corridor. And I hope that kind of address your concern.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great response, Sam. And George, I would encourage you, if you would like to look at more at the traffic analysis and the data, to reach out to one of the members of the PDT, project development team, and we can pass along to you some more detailed traffic analysis.
I appreciate that, and I'll be watching. But if you're not familiar with driving that section of road, even the signage for the truck climbing lane is non-existent. And it is confusing if you try to go over into that lane and then all of a sudden you find yourself on Avila Beach Drive and where it merges back into 2 lanes is, poor location. And the other thing is truckers are not using that climbing lane anymore because of the accelerating cars coming up on their right-hand side, and they can't move over in time. So there's a number of points there that makes that truck climbing lane, for me, hazardous. But again, I find it to be the cause, the merge after you go into that truck climbing lane, the merge back into traffic, which is causing the real congestion, the real problem. And I think for $61 million, there's a much simpler and less costly fix if you could just barricade off that truck climbing lane and see what happens. I'll bet you lunch in downtown San Luis Obispo someplace that the congestion will clear up. But anyway, thanks for the opportunity and look forward to the project.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. All right, we have another question from Lori. Many areas in California have constructed temporary lanes for congestion relief. Eventually, those temporary lanes become permanent full-time lanes due to increased traffic volumes. When are these temporary lanes expected to become full-time lanes?
Sam?
Yeah, so we did look at that, and the traffic studies looked at traffic or growth in 2026 and 2046. And when we use the 2046 projected volumes into the models, it shows that with this part-time lane, we're still able to handle the demands to 2046 and beyond. So technically, based on the traffic projections and the traffic analysis, this part-time lane is going to last us for quite some time.
Sam, if you don't mind that I may, we harness those traffic models and we try to project out into the future how long that lane can still be used in a part-time fashion. But we do monitor our state highway system, and in this regard, and in this area through Shell Beach and Pismo, we'll be monitoring the functionality of the part-time lane. And when the part-time component, our models say at least 20 years can still be part-time starting in 2026, but we'll be monitoring the part-time lane use and functionality. And when it does evolve to full-time lane capacity, which we expect to be more than 20 years from now, don't quite know when, we would put forth a smaller project to take down any hardware or signage that would indicate the part-time lane, and then open up the part-time lane to full-time use. To answer Lori's question, we know that it'll be part-time for at least 20 years, and then after that time period, we continuously monitor that and communicate with the public if changes from part-time to full-time would occur.
Thank you, Paul, for the additional explanation.
Thank you, Lori, for your question. Hopefully we were able to answer that for you. Anna, do we have any more questions open?
We do not. So if anyone has any follow-up questions or something that they hadn't asked yet and wants to, you can ask another question.
And I'll open that to the panelists as well. If there's anything you feel that we could reiterate or build upon, please feel free. The public hearing is open until 7:30.
Nope.
See
Okay, it
one
looks
more
like-
from Craig.
Yeah. All right, Craig, what's your question?
Well, thank you for letting me indulge. I became aware of this hearing via our Facebook SOS page by our neighborhood historian that posts on that all the time. But I never heard of this in any other fashion. How are these meetings? How is the public notified about these? Because it doesn't seem like we have a very large turnout here. And maybe if there's another one coming up about this topic, it could be somehow distributed to the residents here to have a little bit more input.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Craig. We worked with our RPIO, our public information officer, coordinated with her counterpart at Caltrans to do press releases. That was one way to do. We did it. We posted it to SLOCOG social media sites. And I believe an email blast and newsletters. Anna, like I said, is our PIO, and she could speak a little bit more to how often those were sent out. But that's a great comment. You're right. This is, we're competing with not only other jurisdictional meetings, but Game 1 of the World Series.
I'd also like to add that I think there was a New Times ad that was taken out as well. And we also have actually a little bit of greater participation just streaming it on YouTube right now.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was mentioning is that we have it both recording and we've got it live streaming on YouTube. So we'll be posting this to our website for those who are unable to attend.
And one additional, Jim Shivers, Anna's counterpart at Caltrans, our public information officer, was interviewed by KSBY for a story that went out on October 8th. And the closer statement of that news article, which was aired for an 11 o'clock, news brief, but also reiterated on KSBY's news feed, they advertised this meeting event as well. It's always difficult to try to reach the public in as many ways as we can, and we at Caltrans really try to partner as best we could with our partners in SLOCOG to get the word out. But your comment, Craig, is really important, and I think Paula mentioned another opportunity where this project would likely be presented to the public to go through the coastal permitting process, and that's another opportunity for a public hearing as well.
I'd also like to add that I sent out a letter to residents in the kind of adjacent to the highway back in March and gave them a heads up that this was coming. And then I sent out for anybody who responded either to the notice of preparation 3 years ago or to my letter. I sent out an email to those people. I was hoping it would be word of mouth, but what would you suggest? What's the best way to get the news out down there? I'm asking Craig since he lives down there. Do you have a suggestion?
You seem to know people, Craig.
Is his mic open? Can he respond?
I need to call.
I
There we go.
It looks like it was also brought up as an item on the Pismo City Council tonight. It was a
Yeah, sorry to interject here in front of Craig's response to Paula's question, but it was mentioned on the South County Chamber of Commerce website. They reiterated on their the fact that this meeting was occurring, and love or hate Zoom, right? This is our new reality for the time being. So it allowed some of our team members to be virtually in 2 places at once. And David Beard skipped out on the beginning portion of our presentation to provide a similar but truncated version of this presentation at the city council meeting with the city of Pismo today, starting at the same time.
And then also, when this is done, we'll have a recording that we will share along with that email address for submitting public comments through the deadline. So we'll continue to get the word out so that people can still have a voice and they can still watch the presentation.
We're accepting comments until November 17th.
Okay, it looks like we actually have another question from Craig. Craig, would you like to state your question?
Am I unmuted at this point?
You're unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was still muted. Well, I was going to respond to the question that was presented to me. Do I have any suggestions on a better way to do this? Not really. Effie McDermott, our local historian here for Pismo in Shell Beach, with the SOS page of on Facebook is the way I was notified about this. And I try to attend as many planning commission meetings that we have via Zoom and that type of thing. But it's Effie McDermott is the star when it comes to getting the word out. I don't know
What is the SOS page?
SOS, Save Old Shell Beach.
Okay.
Is that the same? Do they have a YouTube channel where they provide updates on the Shell Beach Streetscape project?
A YouTube channel? I don't know.
Okay, I've seen that. I was just curious.
The other organization that we have in our community here is SBIG, SBIG.
I did email them, and I might have even emailed the Save Our Old Shell. I looked for groups and emailed them as well.
Okay, well, if you did your best, you did your best. Like I said, it was word of mouth through the Facebook page for me. I'm just glad that I heard about it and was able to, take a look at the documents. I like to be involved.
No, we are likewise. Those are good things that we try to strive for. So I appreciate those comments, Craig. And
yeah,
some new leads.
The South County Chamber of Commerce, they also announced this Zoom meeting as well, I believe.
That's true.
All right, it looks like we have a comment from Lori. There is no word of mouth going on during COVID. I live in Shell Beach. We often get postcards for Zoom meetings for projects in the area. We did not get any postcards for this. I will add the caveat that postcards can be very expensive, which is...
Yeah, there would have been I did try to do initially like a 200-foot circumferencing, and just thousands and thousands and thousands. It was, even the letter I sent out in March, it was just almost undoable.
But we're continually improving our outreach process. So yeah, do you have any other ideas? We're all ears to hear them, and we'll definitely continue to get the word out through the comment period. Anyone else?
Any comments, Anna, coming in on the YouTube side?
No.
Okay.
All right, we're at a pause on questions.
Okay. And if we have no more questions from the attendees on the meeting right now, I would invite our panelists all to turn off their cameras if they would like to, as we wait for the end of the public hearing, about 36 minutes out.
Were there a few more slides that you wanted to go through to kind of conclude before, and then we'll just hang on in case someone joins?
We're losing people here. You're right. I got caught up in the spirit of conversation. Let's see here.
So the next steps for those of you that are still viewing but don't plan to stick around till the end of the comment period at 7:30, just so that the next steps is that we're taking comments on behalf of the release of this environmental document, and that comment period closes November 17th, so just under a month from now. Afterwards, this team will be diligently responding to comments. We're working alongside the effort that's being led by SlowCog to secure construction funding. We hope to hear back from those grant applications in December of this year. In parallel, we'll be working on taking in those comments and trying to aggregate the public feedback for this project. And then as a team, with that feedback aggregated, we hope to select an alternative. The final environmental document is anticipated to be complete and approved by May of 2021. And then soon after, we will resume work on this project by beginning the design on that selected alternative and vying for the permitting associated with that project alternative. And that'll commence in the summer of 21. The design is extensive. Obviously, there's structures involved. So the design will take a couple of years, and we anticipate to begin construction in winter of 2023, assuming that all things fall in place with construction funding and permitting. And construction would last a couple of years. And if construction commences in 2023 winter, we anticipate completion of construction in 2025 winter.
Thank you, Paul. We did have one question, one comment come in through the chat from familiar name here. Miss Terry Persons asks, will there be any improvements to the bike ped path across the creek and railroad tracks along the southbound side? And I believe, Paula, you have a response to that.
Yeah, it's just, no, that's not included with our project. The project that was called the Pismo Scour, and it did some work underneath the Pismo Creek Bridge a year or two ago. They did look into doing some path improvements, and there just isn't room underneath the bridges as everything's currently constructed.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you for that question, Terry. Not only is Terry a colleague, but she's also a resident of Pismo, so is our design manager. So we got team members that are also local residents. And so for more information on this project, as it relates to the environmental document and studies performed on behalf of the environmental document, Laura Bertena is our Caltrans Senior Environmental Planner, and Paula Huddleston is our Caltrans Environmental Coordinator. Their contact information is indicated there. With regards to the project design, you're certainly welcome to contact me, the project manager for Caltrans. You see my information there, as well as our design manager really leading the charge in all the design details, and that would be David Beard. And then beyond that, Stephen, is there another slide we can cover besides the context? Oh, and I wanted to really thank you for attending this project team. Many of which are residents of the community in the South County and Pismo Beach and Shell Beach, really value the setting in which this proposed improvement is housed. And we look forward to hearing more from those in the community who have comment on behalf of this project. And we look forward to progressing this project forward. And so and thank you for attending, and we'll be sticking around until 7:30 for any comments or questions that may come our way, either through this forum on Zoom or on YouTube.
We just got a comment on YouTube from Paul McClintock. It says this is a really innovative project idea.
Agreed. I think we got a comment come in from Lori on the chat.
Oh, thank you. This project is very important to Shell Beach residents. Many potential significant impacts to our community with no real mitigation for those impacts. It's worth the expense of outreach for input, in my opinion.
Thank you for that comment, Lori.
I would just like to say we do have mitigation. It's just we're not able to mitigate the impacts to below the level of significance. So that's why we prepared an environmental impact report It's a big undertaking. It's going to be a big impact, and there really isn't any way that you can make it any smaller. It is what it is. Ooh, sorry about that quote.
I've heard that somewhere. Okay, thank you everyone for attending. And the panelists, like Paul mentioned, we will remain on the line until the close of the public hearing at 7:30.
Stephen, sorry to bother. Would you mind moving the slide back to the ways in which meeting attendees can comment and chime in? Thanks a lot.
There we go. Yep, there we go.
Is there another question from somebody? Stephen, can you check the chat there?
Looking at the chat, it looks like they've all been answered.
Anna, did you say there was a question on the
But
YouTube
there is
side?
one that I didn't mark as answered. Did Terry Parsons' question about will there be any improvements to the bike ped path across the creek and railroad tracks along the southbound side?
Yeah,
That was
we moved
answered,
that.
right?
Yeah, we answered that.
Okay.
That was Paula.
Okay.
And are there any? There's no questions on the YouTube side.
No.
Okay.
Oh wait. Oh, I see. We have Craig raising his hand again. Apologize, Craig. Would you like to ask your question?
We'll ask to unmute, and Craig, you'll have a message.
I'm
There
sorry.
you go. No, you're
Thank you.
Thank you.
In regard to my comment on the aesthetic treatment or possible aesthetic treatment of the retaining walls, how does one, make suggestions to Caltrans on that topic, besides just my comment that I made in the meeting?
So you're asking how you can make a suggestion on the treatment of the sound walls or the retaining wall, either one?
Well, retaining walls primarily, because along along the frontage road down by Oak Park, one kind of treatment has been used. I know that, there's different, structures, retaining structures and center median divide structures and all these different type of things. We have a large amount of different type of treatments that have been used. So, I'm not sure who makes that decision. How do you come up with suggestions for those type of, creative ventures? It was nice to see some of the Shumash stuff, and I'm aware of some of the things that have been done at different pullouts and that type of thing along the 1 and the 154. So how does Caltrans digest public comment on that?
Any kind of aesthetic treatments are, those are managed by our landscape architects. So we'd certainly go through the suggestions. A lot of times we'll have maybe workshops. I know that they're going to be talking to the Chumash members to see if they have any ideas of what they might like to see. So, I've never really been involved at the outset of that kind of thing. So I'm not sure how it begins, but I do know that they get the community involved. A lot of times working through the city or through community groups that they know of. Again, we'll try to get in touch with these sources you gave us. So.
Okay, thank you.
That help? Okay.